Welcome back with a smiling face. Links to previous episodes are given in the video description, so don't forget to like, subscribe and share the video. The Luna in the Shadows. Episode 2. Hermanos, I whispered. Did you have to drug her? Loveless asked, staring at our sister in my arms with a sad look on his face. He had no choice, Loveless. Nolan cut in. We all know she was about to scream. If we allowed her to make any noise, it could have easily alerted anyone from the Moon Pack. An encounter with them right now is the last thing we need. Nolan was right. It's not like I enjoyed drugging her any more than my brothers did, but the fact remained that we were in Austin's territory. The smallest noises could alert them. Why is there a bandage on her forehead? Thane demanded, his voice as sharp as a knife. I followed his gaze and sure there was a huge bandage plastered there. We can't discuss this here, we could get answers from her when she awakes. And kill anyone who hurt her. Where do we take her? Marcus asked, taking a look around us. We definitely can't stay here. Nolan pointed out. And we can't take her back to the council, not when Dad doesn't know what we're up to. Not that the council is a safe place for her either way, whether my father knew or not. The council is the last place I'd carry Lucy, not after what happened to my other sisters there. We can take her back to our old house. No one stays there anymore, and that's the last place Austin would be looking for her. I suggested. It was the best option we had for now. As my brothers all nodded in agreement, I looked down at Lucy once more. It was time to tell her the truth. Lucy's POV, I groaned out loud, my eyes finding it hard to focus at the bright light. I blinked a couple of times before I could finally see clearly. As my vision cleared, I suddenly wished it hadn't, as the 5 men from before all surrounded me, watching me closely. I gasped and gripped the sheets around me in fear. They had kidnapped me. Hi, I'm Marcus, I let out a loud scream, cutting him off. Nice going, jackass! The only blonde-haired one of the group shouted. You scared her. What did I do? The tallest one shook his head at the two. Lucy, please calm down, we're not going to hurt you. That's what murderers usually say. I whispered. They all chuckled at that. Well, we're not murderers. Well, actually, the shortest of the group started but quickly shut his mouth as the others turned to glare at him. How do you know me? I stuttered. Who wants to tell her? The tallest asked. How about we all say at the same time? The one who had tried introducing himself to me as Marcus before quietly suggested. I waited patiently for them to speak. Lucy. They started. We're your brothers. I blinked up at them. My brothers? This is some kind of joke, right? Or a plot to get back at Austin and his family? I finally asked when I could find my voice. They snorted. Like we would give Austin and his family that amount of attention. Our sole purpose in bringing you here was to tell you the truth. I don't understand. Why wait till now to come find me and break the news to me that you're supposedly my brothers? The tallest spoke again. Because we only recently found out where you were this entire time. Father hid the truth from us about your whereabouts. As soon as we knew exactly where you'd been all these years, we wasted no time in sorting you out. Paid a visit to your old family. There we learned that you'd gotten married to him. Why should I believe you? I asked, constantly reminding myself to breathe with this new information. We don't have any reason to lie to you, Lucy. How would us telling you that we're your brothers benefit us in any way? Tell me you don't feel the sibling connection between us. We haven't seen you in years and yet at first glance we knew it was you. Because you're the print of our mother, you look exactly like her," he said, pulling out an envelope from his pockets. He reached inside it and pulled something out. "Take a look," he said, handing it to me. I stared at the photo in my hand in shock. He was right. I was the print of the woman in this picture. My mother? My actual real mother? My hands trembled as I ran my fingers gently over the delicate photo. Was I really looking at my mother? All my life I've wondered what she'd look like. She was stunning to say the least. "You can ask us any questions and we'd answer them all," he continued. "What are your names?" They seemed pleased at that question as slow smiles formed on their faces. "Well, I already tried introducing myself as Marcus before, but you cut me off with that loud scream." I flushed. "I'm Thane." The blonde-haired one introduced himself. He was leaned up against the wall studying me intently. "I'm Nolan." Another added. I dragged my gaze from Thane to look at him. He was surprisingly the most quiet, with eyes strikingly similar to my own. He flashed me a dazzling smile and I couldn't help but return it. "I'm Lutheus." The shortest continued with the introductions. He seemed like the youngest of the five and the most sensitive at that too, if I'd read him right. "And I'm Romano," the tallest said lastly. "We've waited our entire lives for this introduction, Lucy." I felt my heart tug at his words as another thought suddenly crossed my mind. "Are you werewolves as well?" A shocked look crossed each of their faces at my question, as they gave each other confused glances. "You know about werewolves?" Romano asked in a shocked whisper. I nodded my head. "I found out yesterday that werewolves exist and that Austin and his family are werewolves as well." Thane's gaze darkened. "Is that how you got that bruise on your forehead?" "Oh. I almost forgot about that." "Yes, but those," they shouted as they all rose up as if ready for a fight. "I'll kill that!" Romano shouted. "What are you guys?" I started, but none of them were paying any attention to me. "Stop!" They finally turned to stare at me, seeming surprised at my outburst. "Finally," I mumbled. "Austin wasn't the one to hurt me. I was attacked by 3 other wolves and Austin was the one to save me." "Which pack were they from?" Thane demanded. "Pack?" I asked, confused. Marcus quirked a brow at me. "I see you still have plenty to learn about us." "Us? So you guys are werewolves as well?" Marcus chuckled. "We're not the only ones, Lucy, you are one as well." I stared at Marcus as if he were mad. "Lucy?" Lutheus called, seeming concerned at my dazed look. I couldn't answer, couldn't speak, my tongue felt heavy and I was left dumbstruck. "Nice going, Marcus, you broke her on the first meeting," Thane said in dry tone. "It's not possible, I've been a human my entire life." I disagreed. They didn't know what they were speaking about. I couldn't be a werewolf. It simply wasn't possible. "I'm sorry, Lucy, but you are no doubt a full-blooded werewolf. You have the cross blood running through your veins," Romano informed me. I swallowed. Why haven't I experienced any signs of being a werewolf? I don't have any of the strength that they possess. I'm completely physically weak," I stated, pointing at the bandage on my forehead. As you can see, I bruise easily, unlike werewolves. Thane nodded. While that is true, it has been brought to our attention that father had a witch put a spell on you, to keep your wolf inside of you so that you wouldn't shift while living amongst your human family. Sadly, when it comes to you, father keeps everything bottled up inside, so we have no idea what breaks the spell or who's the witch that put the spell on you. If we knew whom it was, we could have forced her to reverse the spell. You mean there is a possibility the spell could break on its own? I asked in fear. I didn't want to be a werewolf, didn't know the first thing about being one. Usually when a spell is put on someone, there is only one possible way the spell can be broken unless reversed by the witch herself. Hermano informed me. Are you sure you've never felt a connection to your wolf before? Something within you? Never even heard an unknown voice in your head? I paled at his words. Voices in my head? Is that what those weird voices were when I'd first met Austin? No. It couldn't be. Nope. Never. I lied. Oh. Hermano commented, disappointment laced in his voice. I looked at the men in front of me now and somehow I just knew they were telling the truth. They were indeed my brothers in flesh and blood. I had brothers. The thought thrilled me. I actually had the brothers I've always wished for my entire life, and they came to find me, actually wanted me in their lives. The thought made me overflow with happiness, but just as fast as it had appeared, it quickly disappeared as another thought crossed my mind almost bitterly. My parents had chosen to keep their other children but gave me up for adoption. Why? Why didn't they want me? It hurt more than all the agony I'd had to face without them. All these years I've suffered with a family that didn't want me, and now I came to know that my real parents, my own flesh and blood, didn't want me either but wanted their other children. I felt the first tear slip from my eyes. Lucy, my brothers gasped in horror. Why didn't they want me? I cried, the pain almost too much for me to bear. My brothers each gave me a pained look. Lucy, please no, I stopped them. I didn't want to hear any excuses. The truth remained that my own parents didn't want me. Please take me home. I begged. Are you sure this is what you want? Hermano asked as we stood outside the palace's gates, behind the trees so that the guards didn't spot my brothers. I nodded. This was my home now. These people actually cared for me, everyone except Austin, of course. But was that even true? For Austin had saved me more than once already in his wolf form, so did he really not care for me? He could have just left me to die on both occasions, but he didn't. We will miss you, Lucy, Marcus whispered. I felt the tears form in my eyes again. It felt amazing to have brothers who cared this much for me. I've been separated my entire life from them, but yet I knew I would give my life for the men in front of me now, and I also knew they would do the same for me. Oh, forsake Marcus, look what you did now. Thane grunted. A sad smile made its way on my face. Thank you so much for coming to find me. The fact that you did means the world to me. I confessed. My brothers pulled me into a group hug as they all surrounded me. We will always be here for you, Lucy. Whenever you need us, we're always watching over you. Remember that. I nodded my head and turned to go. Are you sure you don't want us to go in with you? Thane asked for the 100th time. I shook my head. No, Thane. I already saw what happened on the first meeting between Austin's family and you. I don't want a repeat of that. So please don't. Thane sighed but nodded in understanding. I gave them all a faint smile before waving goodbye. It was time to face Austin and his family and tell them everything I'd just found out. Austin's POV, where can she be? I roared. Lucy had been missing for an entire day and we'd already searched the entire kingdom. I hadn't slept, had ensured none of the pack members did either. Every single person I could command, I had them out in their numbers searching for her. And still, we got nothing, not even a single lead on where she could be. How could this be? It was like she vanished without a single trace. When I barged into the room last night to check on her, restless on being away from her for too long with the condition she was in, and found the room completely empty with the windows opened, I flipped. Not a single soul had seen me act the way I did last night. It was hard to explain, but not knowing Lucy's whereabouts was driving me insane, and I was growing more insane with each passing second that she wasn't near me. Alpha. Alex interrupted my thoughts. What? I snapped, my anger on the verge of collapsing. We just got word from your parents, they found her. He informed me. She's home. I didn't waste time at the news and immediately made my way home, to her. It wasn't long before I was inside the palace's gate, opening door after door, impatient to finally see her. My footsteps slowing only when I spotted her. Her beauty filled my vision and I couldn't help but let it sink in. Both my wolf and I relieved to see her. For a moment I just stood there taking in the sight of her, enjoying every little detail. Her long dark hair was flowing gracefully around her shoulders while her delicate fingers slowly pushed it out her face as she stood there talking to my family. Her gaze suddenly looked up in my direction as if sensing my presence, allowing me to finally see her face. My heart clenched like a fist at what I saw. Her cheeks were flushed and under her eyes swollen. Had she been crying? The thought made my gut twist. I crossed the room to her, intent on pulling her into my arms, but froze as a familiar scent caught my nose. A muscle ticked in my jaw as I felt anger quickly overcome all my other emotions, felt it rushing through my veins. Lucy. Her name dripped from my mouth like venom. Why do you reek of the Fire Cross pack? I flinched at Austin's tone. How did I explain to him that the family that betrayed his family was my very own? How did I explain that even though my brothers hadn't spoken about the past, that deep down I believed that they were good people and could have never done anything bad to his family? Why do I smell them on you, Lucy? He roared. That's where you went missing for an entire day? You were with them? He demanded. After knowing what they did to my family, you would actually stoop so low and still leave with them? When I said nothing, Austin grabbed hold of my hair and brought me inches away from his face so that my only option was to stare deep into his eyes. I gasped at the hurt I saw there, my heart clenched tightly in my chest, unable to see him this tortured because of me. I hate their scent on you. He whispered against my ear, my body trembling in response. Only my scent should be all over your body, Lucy. No one else. He added, his voice a hoarse whisper as he closed his eyes and leaned his forehead against mine. His lips were inches away from mine and his sweet breath fanned my face. My knees suddenly felt like molten lava. I was left speechless, my body paralyzed. When he finally opened his eyes, it was as though the hurt was buried deep inside, replaced by anger. His gaze hardened as he let go of me abruptly, and it took all of my strength to not fall at the sudden abruptness. Are you going to answer me? He shouted, my entire body jumping at his deadly tone, surprised at the sudden change in pitch of his voice. Who do you think you're speaking to like that? That voice. I froze. Surely they didn't? I swung my gaze anxiously towards the distant sound. Sure as hell, there my 5 brothers stood at the doorway with a murderous expression on each of their faces. Those stubborn. Austin stiffened next to me, the tension so thick in the atmosphere around us that it almost hurt to breathe. It all happened so fast that it took my mind a minute before it could wrap itself around what was happening. Austin, Lucas, and James along with Maya were in front of my brothers within seconds, both sides growling aggressively at each other. I watched in utter dismay as they started to size each other up as if getting ready for a battle. I felt like a horror movie was being played before my very eyes, except this was real and not some made-up story. When I saw Austin's fist tighten, ready to throw a punch at Hermano, panic immediately overcame me. Austin! I screamed. Please don't! I begged, not wanting to see a fight break out between the people I cared about. Austin turned to me with a look of betrayal blatantly displayed on his face, and instantly I knew that it would haunt me for the rest of my life. He might as well have stabbed me straight through the middle of my heart. That would have been less painful than the dreadful look he was giving me now. Not only Austin, however, but his entire family were looking at me as though I'd hurt them. The entire room was suddenly dead quiet. Thane was the first to break the cold silence. He glared at Austin before turning his gaze to me. Let's go, Lucy. Austin's pale gaze sought me out, completely pinning me with his stare as he waited to see what I would do. I walked towards my brothers, intent on telling them to leave and let me explain the truth to Austin and his family. Before I could reach them, however, Austin grabbed my arm and pulled me close as he leaned down to whisper dangerously against my ear. Don't step foot into our kingdom ever again. He warned, his ice-cold voice sounding unforgiving and completely distant. This was the harshest he's ever been to me since my arrival here, and it hurt like hell. I gasped in tortured distress as he let go of my arm abruptly, and before I had a chance to respond, stormed out of the room, leaving me feeling completely empty and lost. Austin's POV, flame coursed through my veins and pumped my heart aggressively as I lay against the floor in conflicted pain. I'd let Lucy go and told her never to step foot in my kingdom again. My own words were haunting me now. My wolf was restless within me. He was fighting me almost vigorously to be let out, to go after Lucy. This was the most he'd ever fought me before, and it had me at war with myself. When I'd smelt them on her, I'd completely lost it, wanted to take her in my arms that only my scent would be on her body for months. The urge was so hard I could have done it right there in front of my entire family. Even now, the reminder of their scent on her beautiful body had me going insane. When Lucy had stopped me from attacking, it was like the last straw had been drawn and I lost my mind. And then I'd seen her make her way towards them. The thought of her leaving me for them undid me in a way impossible to describe. I wanted to hurt her like she'd hurt me, but at the same time I didn't want to cause her any pain, wanted to be the one to put a smile on her breathtaking face. I was still clearly losing my mind. I told you she was a whore, Ariana said, breaking through my thoughts, her words cutting deeper than a knife. A muscle ticked in my jaw. I was ready to block Ariana out of my mind, her voice sounding annoying to my own ear when she suddenly spoke again. I was talking to Father today, remember he had someone look into her background. That immediately caught my attention. What more did her father find out? Well, she continued. Lucy was having an affair with one of the members of the Fire Cross Pack. I saw red at her words. Is the source a trusted one? I asked, not wanting to believe those words that completely flipped my insides and filled me with so much hate and anger that could possibly cause my body to explode. Of course. She answered, glaring at me. My father is the best when it comes to those things. Whoever he hired would have spoken the truth and nothing but the truth. Lucy is a complete and utter. I didn't hear anything Ariana said after that. I wanted to kill, needed to kill. When I saw them again, and I would make sure I do, I would mercilessly kill every single one of those. Lucy's POV. I stood glaring at my brothers while they each gave me a guilty smile. I thought I told you not to come in. I asked. You expected us to stay put and do nothing while he was speaking to you like that? Thane demanded. He is lucky we didn't beat out of him right there and then. Hermano added. He feels he runs the world just because he's the alpha of the strongest pack. Marcus commented. Someone needs to give him a wake-up call. Lutheus nodded his head in agreement. Nolan was the only one who was silent. He was leaned up against a tree taking in the conversation and studying me closely. You weren't even supposed to be listening in on the conversation. I pointed out angrily. We weren't going to. Marcus confessed. But then we saw Austin rushing inside and knew he wasn't up to anything good. Well, thanks to you guys now I'm homeless and the only people who ever accepted me into their lives think I've betrayed them and want nothing to do with me. I snapped. My brothers winced at my words, looking hurt. I'm sorry. I quickly apologized. I know you were only thinking about me, but I could have cleared up the misunderstandings on my own. All these years I've learned to fight my battles alone. You don't have to protect me from everything. We're sorry, Lucy. Lutheus apologized. It's okay. I said, giving him a faint sad smile. But where am I supposed to go now? My brothers were silent for a long minute, Hermano the first to break the uncomfortable silence. We're taking you back to the council with us, he announced, earning surprised looks from my other brothers. The council? What was he talking about? Lucy's POV. Black pillars stood on each side of a long bridge that at the moment seemed never-ending. I peeped out the window of the vehicle to get a better look at the ocean beneath us. The fresh sea breeze plucked at my hair, and for a moment I lifted my face and inhaled deeply, allowing myself to get lost in the moment. But for a few seconds, closing my eyes and imagining my life wasn't filled with so much pain. Content with my daydreaming, I sighed quietly and leaned back against the seat. After a few minutes I opened my eyes to study my brothers, who'd been surprisingly quiet the entire drive. All of them for some reason seemed tense. It was the first time I'd seen them look this worried. Where exactly are we going? I asked. The council is built on an island, Hermano explained. They built it centuries ago to keep far away from humans. This was the first question about the council he had actually answered. In fact, none of them were willing to tell me more about this council they spoke of. It was beginning to worry me. What were they hiding from me? After what felt like hours, the island finally came into view. I rose up from my slouched position on the seats and looked out the window again. To the side of us, what seemed like hundreds of young boys or more were training to fight. Each had swords in their hands and were attacking each other, fighting as though to survive. I watched in horror as one boy stabbed another and he fell to the ground completely motionless. Where was this place? Why are they killing each other? I asked in horror, my chest hurting at the horrible sight in front of me. The council only wants the best working for them, Thane said bitterly before turning to stare straight at me. Only the strongest survive here, Lucy. My heart ached for these poor boys. Why were they even here? Why would anyone want to work for these people? I demanded. Lutheus looked at me with sad eyes. If a family isn't strong enough to survive on their own, they join the council for protection and in hopes of a better life, he explained. Sadly, no one knows exactly what they're getting themselves into until they finally join. Why did he speak like he was one of them? Unless no, it couldn't be. I gasped. All of you work for them, don't you? They nodded their heads at me. How long now? Hermano spared me a quick glance before answering. Over 10 years now. Don't look at us like that, Thane complained. We're doing absolutely fine, as you can see, Marcus pointed out with a grin. I wanted to respond, but no words formed in my mouth. I couldn't even begin to imagine what they had to go through in this horrible place. We passed through a small village before the car finally came to a stop in front of a gigantic black gate, the Black Council imprinted bold and black on the stone walls. As the gates opened, a statue of a great dragon was the first thing that caught my eyes. There were two demon-like horns on the sides of its face. Its eyes sitting lightly on a narrow skull was the scariest, most intimidating feature of all. It seemed as though it were looking straight through your soul, almost as if the statue were alive. The mouth was opened widely, showing off rows of large teeth, and my mind subconsciously imagined the mighty roar that would have escaped the dragon if it were indeed alive. Its massive demonic wings were spread out high up in the air along with two of the creature's massive feet. That dragon! I'd seen it somewhere before. My eyes suddenly snapped up to my brothers as my gaze traveled to each of their arms, and there it was. The same exact dragon was drawn in black ink, imprinted on each of their shoulders. My brothers caught my open stare. It's the symbol that lets everyone know you belong to the Black Council, Thane explained before the question could even escape my lips. Here she goes giving us that pity look again, Marcus groaned. Lucy, Hermano said, placing emphasis on my name. You have no reason to worry about us. At first it was difficult, but we all eventually adapted. We wouldn't be the men we are today if we didn't go through those hardships. It only made us stronger. Before I could respond, the car came to an abrupt stop in front of a massive castle. My eyes widened. It was the biggest structure I'd ever set my eyes on. Even though it was daylight and the sun shone its light on the castle, I still couldn't help the sudden shiver that ran down my spine in fear at the powerful negative vibes that radiated out from it. The entire castle was covered in black, everything except the windows, which were tinted in a dark red, resembling the eyes of the devil himself. I slowly stepped out the vehicle, never taking my eyes off the sight in front of me. I see, the Cross brothers have finally returned. My eyes studied the middle-aged man in front of me, who was watching me with curious eyes. He slowly moved his gaze from me back to my brothers. I'm sure you know your father has been in a bad mood ever since you left. Thanks to you men, we've all had to deal with his wrath for days. Father? My heart raced at his words. My father was here? And my brothers didn't say a single word to me? Is this the secret they were keeping from me? They all turned and gave me apologetic smiles, all except Marcus, who had his hands stretched out above his head behind him, avoiding any eye contact with me whatsoever. Those traitors! It's nice to see you too, Uncle, Thane said dryly. Uncle? This man was my uncle? Well, I would advise you boys to not waste any time in going to see your father, that is if you want any of us to live to see another day again, since your father is going to explode any minute now. Suddenly every single one of my brothers stiffened besides me, their faces a pale white. My eyes followed their gazes and spotted a man who stood a distance away from us at the castle's entrance. His entire being radiated power, his stance demanded everyone's attention, even the magnificent castle drowned out behind him. His eyes were on my brothers with a look so deadly that if looks could kill they were already dead by now. I actually felt sorry for them to be under a gaze that strong, but all thoughts immediately flew out my head as he turned those eyes on me. And I knew. I just knew, from the blonde hair that looked very much like Thane's to the green eyes that was strikingly similar to Marcus's and the face that closely resembled every single one of my brothers. This man was my father. Austin's POV. I stumbled onto the bed, feeling completely lost. My room was the one place I craved being these days, since it was the one place where Lucy's fragrant scent still lingered. I inhaled deeply, her sweet scent filling my nostrils and calming my racing heart, but only a little, for the body couldn't be fooled, it knew Lucy wasn't here by my side. I groaned in distress, the restlessness was becoming unbearable, and soon enough not even her scent in the room would be able to comfort me, for even that was slowly withering away with each second that ticked by. Sudden footsteps outside my door caught my attention, followed by a loud impatient knock. "You may want to hear this," James said, barging into my room. "What's that?" I asked on alert. "Follow me." I did as he said. Everyone were already in the living room with a strange young boy I hadn't seen around before. "Tell the rest of them what you told me," James commanded him. The young boy looked scared to speak but eventually went on. "I was ordered by Alpha Eric to dig up on Princess Lucy's background." He started. My heart leaped in my chest at just the mention of her name. "What did you find out?" I demanded, impatient to know what he knew. The boy looked shaken at my tone. Alpha Richard is her father, the Fire Cross Pack is Princess Lucy's real family." Shock raced through my veins at the speed of light, paralyzing my entire body. They were her brothers? Her brothers? Lucy didn't have an affair? What did I do? My mother gasped. "Oh no, what have we done?" she asked in horror. We didn't give the child a chance to explain herself. Lucas shook his head at me. "I told you Lucy wasn't capable of having an affair," he snapped. "You said Alpha Eric told you." I asked the boy. "Did Ariana know as well?" The boy swallowed and slowly nodded his head. The betrayal ate at me raw. She knew all along? "Why did you come to us?" I asked suspiciously. "What is it you want?" "I would like to join your pack Alpha. I have nowhere else to turn to," he answered honestly. It made sense now. "I see," I said, studying the boy in front of me. He looked like he really had nowhere else to turn. "I will discuss it more with you when I return. In the meantime, have James help you." "Where are you going?" my father asked anxiously. "To pay someone a visit," I answered, my voice sounding ice cold to my own ear. As soon as Ariana saw the look on my face, she doubled back against the wall in fear. "You knew?" I spat at her in disgust. "All this time you knew?" Her face instantly paled. I don't know what you're talking about," she stuttered. Don't lie to me, Ariana. You knew all along that they were her brothers when I roared as my fist connected to the wall behind her, some of the blocks falling to the ground into a million pieces. And yet you continued to say all those things about her, making me believe she really was having an affair. I looked at her in disgust for the first time ever since I'd found out we were mates. I was scared I was losing you. She cried. I needed to do something. I don't want to hear anything. I shouted. Don't expect to see me for a few days. Where are you going? She asked in horror. I gave her a death glare. To bring Lucy back. She gasped. You can't. I can. I growled. And I will. I was halfway out the door when her next words lashed out at me. You don't understand, they took her back to the council. She screamed. My body froze. The council? For a moment I stood there paralyzed, unable to think or breathe properly. They took her to the council? Lucy couldn't be there. It wasn't safe for someone as delicate as her. Even the strongest struggled to survive in that hell hole. I had to leave now before anything happened to her. Don't go! Ariana screamed again. Please, Austin, I love you. I ignored all her calls as the anger of her betrayal mixed with my fear for Lucy's safety pounded against my temples, giving me an instant excruciating headache. I felt my gut twist in agony. I needed to get to Lucy, needed to see her in front of my eyes, needed to touch her, caress her, needed to see for myself that she was safe and out of any danger, needed these things more than I needed air to breathe. Lucy's POV, as my father took slow steps towards us, each of my brothers stiffened further, if that were even possible. Why did you bring her here? His voice was a deadly calm, like the quiet before the storm. All of my brothers remained completely silent, none of them meeting father's eyes. I asked, why did you bring her here? He roared with so much power that even the birds around the palace flew away in fear. The look in his eyes reflecting the anger within. When they still said nothing, my father's fist clenched at his sides, his rage doubling. Take her back now. My heart howled in pain at the repeated rejection, shattering into a million pieces at his words. My brain struggled to come to terms with the sudden rejection. What more should I have expected from someone who'd given me up when I was but a child? Father! Hermano cut in angrily. We're not taking her back there, she stays. If Lucy goes, we go. Thane threatened, his eyes a glassy glare. You didn't see the way Austin treated her. Lutheus added unhappily. We can't let her go back there. Father shook his head in disappointment at them. You fools! You think the notorious Alpha Austin would just let his wife leave without starting a war? Do you even know what you have done? You boys always act without thinking of the consequences of your actions. Lutheus flinched beside me. Did he really believe Austin would start a war for me? He could barely stand me. Why would he risk harming his family for me? My father was clearly wrong. Austin wasn't capable of doing that for someone like me who meant absolutely nothing to him. She stays, father. Marcus repeated his brother's words. At least until we find somewhere else for her. Did you not hear me? What's all the commotion about? Someone interrupted. My father stiffened as the man who was dressed all in black joined the conversation. He had an amused look on his face and reeked of evil. Everything about him spoke volumes on his cold dark aura, his eyes reflecting his black soul. He had a pitch-black crow on one hand while he used his other hand to gently pet its head. The man moved his head to the side and studied me, the bird copying his actions. "Who is this lovely young girl, Richard?" My father glared once more at my brothers as if to say, "See you've done," before turning to bow his head at the man. This man clearly held a position of high authority, for even my brothers bowed at his entrance. "Good day, prosecutor," he greeted the man. "This is one of my daughters." The prosecutor, as father called him, scratched his chin as his eyes openly took me in, his cold gaze making me uncomfortable. "I've met all your daughters already. Why have you not introduced this one, and why does she not have our signature dragon on her neck?" Daughters? I had sisters? And what nonsense was he speaking about a signature dragon on my neck? Was he referring to the dragons on my brother's shoulders? "She does not belong to the council," my father grit out. By the way his fists tightened at his sides and the vein at his temples popped out, you could tell he was trying hard to keep it together. "Oh, what a pity," the man concluded. "Surely we can change that, have her join. I hear Sir Vincent's son is looking for a bride." "She's already taken," Hermano growled. He raised his dark eyebrows. "I wasn't speaking to you, boy. Richard, your boys are becoming quite disrespectful. They're lucky that they are beneficial to the council, lucky that father favors them for now," he said bitterly. "Now, who, pray tell, is she already wedded to?" "Alpha Prince Austin Lance Vinci," my father answered stiffly. The prosecutor's eyes widened with interest. "I see. The famous Alpha has always sparked interest within our council. Have heard much about him, and I must say we like what we've heard so far. It would be our pleasure to have his wife stay as our guest for a few days," he announced. "On one occasion, as long as we get to meet him." My heart pounded at his words. No, I didn't want Austin anywhere near this place. Not that I had anything to fear, he wouldn't come. "Right? Where are you taking me now?" I asked my brothers suspiciously, knowing I couldn't trust them, especially when it came to introductions. "You'll see eventually," Marcus replied with a huge grin. My gaze took in the beautiful scenery in front of me. Out of everything I'd seen so far, this was the only area that pleased me. It was not what I expected. Everything about the island was dark, but yet this was one of the most beautiful forests I'd ever set my eyes on. The enchanted forest helped calm my raging nerves that was at its peak from the events that had unfolded earlier, the sweet perfume of the trees around me drawing me completely in. When I thought it couldn't possibly get any better, I spied a turquoise blue stream a little distance away. The luscious sound of the water flowing helped to calm my nerves even further, that is, until I spotted a figure near the stream. The woman's long black hair glowed as cords of soft light gently touched her from the bright sun above. She reached over and gently pushed the hair back, her face coming into view. I froze, my feet unable to take another step, my brain suddenly incapable of forming words. It was the woman from the picture. My mother. She was leaned down patting some dirt next to the stream with a content smile on her face, as if sensing our presence she glanced up in our direction. "I see my sons have final." Her words stopped halfway as her gaze landed on me. Her hands flew to her mouth in shock as soon as her eyes rested on me, brimming brightly with unshed tears that resembled that of diamonds. Seconds passed as we just stood there staring at each other, my brain struggling to come to terms with my mother being but only a few feet away from me, struggling with the fact that it wasn't a picture this time but my actual real mother in flesh right in front of me. I couldn't help my own reaction as tears of my own formed in my eyes as my heart welled with emotion. Mom," I whispered. The first tear rolled down her cheeks upon me calling her mom, and she quickly closed the distance between us before pulling me into her arms. I felt my body shake uncontrollably against her as I let out all of the tears I'd held back throughout the past years of not having her by my side. I clung to her as I let all of the emotion bottled up inside me out for the first time. We stood in that position for a long time before she pulled away, drying my tears with the palm of her hands. "My Lucy," she whispered, happy tears flowing down her face like a fountain. Her face suddenly went pale white as if remembering something. "What is she doing here?" she demanded from my brothers, who gave her their famous guilty smiles. "What have you boys done now?" she asked, covering her face in her hands. "You can't stay here, Lucy," she added, turning to me. I paled. "Please do not misjudge me, my sweet Lucy. I'm very happy to see you, but this place is not safe for you. You belong with Austin, you don't belong here," she quickly added. "Belong with Austin?" Was she referring to our marriage? Why did it seem like she meant way more than that? At the mention of Austin, I couldn't help but ask my next question. Did our family betray Austin's family? Her eyes widened before she motioned for me to take a seat on the ground next to her. "It all happened when you were but only 2 years old, Lucy. King Jeremy was at that time the alpha of the Moon Pack. One day the pack was ambushed, attacked by other wolves. Many died that day. Austin, who was 6 at the time, was also badly injured. He almost died," she narrated in a sad tone. "Some of the wolves who were held from the attack were captured. Turns out they were wolves from our own pack. When questioned about who was in charge of the ambush, they blamed your father." "That's awful," I gasped in dismay. "Your father tried to prove his innocence, but the evidence said otherwise. It caused a major drift between both of our families, with Jeremy banning us from ever entering his kingdom again," she continued. "Since many of the wolves from our pack were involved in the attack, our pack lost many of its members, thus becoming weak. We struggled for years until your father decided to join the council in order to provide protection for us." "Was this why you gave me away?" I demanded at the sudden reminder of their betrayal to their own daughter. Tears flowed down her cheeks once more. "I can't give you the exact reasons, Lucy, but please know that both your father and I never wanted to give you up. It was the hardest decision we've ever had to make." "If that were true, then why wouldn't my father speak a single word to me? It seemed more like he just wanted me completely out of his sight. Why did I feel like there was so much more they weren't telling me?" Austin's POV: we were in the woods just before the bridge that connected the land to the island where the Black Council resided. My eyes took in the pack members around me. Everyone looked extra tense. It's probably the first time I've ever seen my pack on edge like this. They were usually confident before any battle. But they had every reason to be. If things went south, it would be like walking into our own graves. James had brought along his entire pack as well, as he understood exactly what we were up against. "This isn't going to be easy," James announced. "I know," I admitted. "At least we have the advantage of the element of surprise." We did. I had one of my good witch friend use a spell on all of us so that the council members wouldn't be able to smell our presence. The plan was to go in, Get Lucy and leave without being spotted or noticed by council members. If things didn't go as planned and something bad took place, I'll let out a howl for my pack members to know we were in danger. What happens from there, no one would know unless it actually came to that. James nodded. Ready? Yeah. I confirmed, turning to Lucas. You are in charge of both packs until we get back. I'll handle things on this end, you both just come back with Lucy in one piece. He said. Alpha. Adam called, catching my attention. Bring her back to us. I looked at the rest of my pack and they reflected the same look Adam gave to me now. They all wanted Lucy back just as much as I did, and once again my chest overflowed with pride. Lucy wasn't even around them for long and already had earned their hearts. I will. I promised. And get her back I would, even if it meant ripping apart the entire council. Lucy's POV. I leaned against the tree with my eyes closed, taking in the fresh scent of the nearby stream. My mother and brothers had left me alone for a few minutes after I had asked for some time to myself. Too many things happened in but a few days, so much information for me to take in with the little time provided. I sighed unhappily. I was restless, haunted by thoughts of Austin, missed him terribly, needed him by my side more than I needed air to breathe. And then I felt it. All the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. And I knew without turning that he was here. Austin was here. Emotion swirled deep in his eyes. A mixture of relief, anger and raw primal lust. He just stood there for a moment, taking me in, his eyes slowly scanning my body from head to toe. My body, like always, trembled under his hungry gaze. He looked as though he couldn't believe I stood there right before his eyes, and when I thought I would die if he didn't take me into his arms soon, he crossed the field to me, his boots crushing the fallen leaves beneath his feet. Before I could even fathom what he was doing, his hand gripped my waist. Lucy. His voice was a deep, throaty, husky whisper before his lips came down on mine. My body shook uncontrollably at the emotions racing through my veins at having Austin's lips on mine. He backed me up against the tree, his mouth kissing me with an urgent hunger, kissing me as though he'd die if he didn't get a taste of me. When I felt his erection pressed up against me, a gasp escaped my mouth at the contact, and Austin used that opportunity to stick his tongue down my throat, sucking and tasting, taking all of me with every swipe of his tongue. He kissed me like a man whose control had slipped and was starving out of control for me, his breathing quick and hard. I broke the kiss so that I could come up for air. Austin didn't stop there as he bent his head and grazed his nose against my throat before leaving soft, sweet kisses there, and then my body shook as all coherent thought left my mind as I felt the warm suction of his mouth against my neck. My body instantly wept for more of him, all of him, every god piece. A burning need deep in my belly that melted my insides, making me all warm, wet, and needy. Austin suddenly froze and I whimpered at the loss of contact before he groaned and buried his head against my neck. Baby! He growled. I can smell your sweet arousal. The wetness increased at his words, the ache there too much for me to bear. Suddenly, without warning, he started. I suddenly remembered where we were. No. The prosecutor's words replayed in my head, sending me into a panic. No, no, no. He couldn't be here. I forced myself to pull away from him. What are you doing here? I demanded anxiously, my hands trembling. Sweat broke out on my forehead as I fought to stay calm. What are you? He started to say. "No, Austin, you have to leave now, you can't be here," I cried in fear. He leaned back, his penetrating gaze searching my face, his eyes still clouded with hunger and need. Why wasn't he going? Just as he was about to say something, I heard multiple footsteps getting closer by the second. "Lucy!" I heard Thane call from a distance. "I think we gave you way more than enough time to yourself," Marcus added. My eyes widened as I quickly fixed my straps and moved away from Austin upon hearing my brothers' voices. My body shook with anxiety as my brothers came into view. They all tensed as their eyes settled on Austin next to me, their gazes turning murderous as they studied the scene in front of them. "What is he doing here?" Hermano demanded. Austin growled possessively. "I'm taking back what's mine." My brothers stiffened at his words. "Like hell you are!" Marcus growled. "It's about time he learns his lesson," Thane shouted. "Guys, please," I started to say, but before I could even begin to comprehend what was happening, my brothers were already shifting into their wolves. Lutheus shifted into a huge silver grey, Nolan a dark grey, Marcus and Thane a mixture of grey and black, Hermano the only full black, similar to that of Austin's, just slightly lighter. I watched in horror as Austin did the same, the great black wolf growling aggressively as my brothers advanced on him slowly. "Please stop," I begged as my brothers begun to circle Austin's wolf. Hermano was the first to attack before all of my brothers joined in. I watched in horror as my brothers all bit into different parts of Austin's wolf, the jet black wolf never once crying out even as he started to bleed. My heart clenched painfully at the nightmare in front of me. "Stop!" I screamed, but no one was paying any heed to me except Austin's wolf, who glanced in my direction upon hearing my cry, but was quickly distracted when Thane's wolf lunged for his throat. A cry wrenched from my soul. How could I help save Austin from my own brothers? He was powerful, but my brothers were also strong, and it was 5 of them against him. The more they attacked, the more I felt something within me grow stronger. Something inside me was fighting to be let loose, fighting to save Austin. Panic shook me as an internal scream started in my head, drowning out everything else. The more I saw Austin's wolf bleed, the more the blood within me boiled, a strange sensation rushing through my veins like energy surging through my entire body, and when the first cry escaped the jet black wolf's mouth, I completely lost it, lost control of both mind and body as I begun to shake uncontrollably. My senses suddenly feeling like they were on overload. I let out a shocked, terrified scream as I felt my body begin to change, shifting, becoming something that was no longer human, becoming a wolf. Austin's POV. Lucy's brothers were fighting to kill, and I couldn't focus properly with her terrified screams. Both my wolf and I were desperate to get to her and calm her down. It made us restless seeing her so scared. I swear if they weren't her brothers, I would have ripped them into shreds already for causing Lucy pain. They didn't even see what their actions were doing to her. I didn't want to seriously injure any of Lucy's brothers. I knew the last thing she would want is something to happen to them, and if it meant harming her, I just couldn't bring myself to do it. So I forced myself to exercise restraint on my emotions and not fight back. Instead, I tried to dodge most of their advances. However, it was hard considering it was 5 of them. Her cries didn't make it any easier. It called out to me. Every time I heard a sound escape her lips, I felt a tug at my heart. My heart howled in protest as both my wolf and I felt powerless for the first time since our existence. torn between wanting to get to Lucy and not being able to do so without harming the people she cared about. It was torture. Another one of her screams broke my concentration, and once again it was like I had no control over my own body. As I quickly glanced over in her direction, my heart clenched at the look on her face. Something was wrong and my wolf could sense it, but before I could even fathom what was happening, one of her brothers lunged for my throat. Her scream had caught me off guard as I didn't have time to block the grey-black wolf's attack, his teeth digging into my wolf. A surprised cry escaped me at the unexpected pain. And that's when it happened. Another terrified scream echoed through the forest, stronger than the ones before, and traveled straight through my veins and made its way all the way to my heart. Lucy! My wolf staggered back in shock as she shifted before our eyes into the most beautiful wolf I'd ever laid my eyes on. A breathtaking snow-white wolf with thick glossy fur. Everything around me moved in slow motion as I continued to stare at the wolf's beauty in awe, taking in as much as my mind would let me. I winced. The distraction had cost me another painful bite yet again from one of her brothers. And then right before my eyes the white wolf leaped into the air and crashed into the fight, taking one of her brothers down with her. She growled aggressively, letting out a loud howl that shook the trees around us as she attacked another one of her brothers, grabbing onto his fur with her teeth and flinging him towards a tree. Without stopping, she proceeded to fling another until all of her brothers stood sprawled out in all different directions, a blank, confused look on each of their faces. She growled once more at them, a warning, letting them know she wouldn't stand down if they proceeded to attack. When none of her brothers made an attempt to move, she slowly turned to me, watching me with careful, curious eyes. Her stance confident and her breathing hard as her penetrating gaze drew me completely in. She stood like that for a while, never taking her eyes off my wolf, and then right before our eyes her body dropped to the ground completely lifeless as it shifted back to her human form to reveal a Lucy. My eyes shut to her brothers who were still in their wolf forms, and a possessive death-threatening growl escaped my wolf as he proceeded to cover Lucy with his body, shielding her from their eyes. "What have you boys done?" A middle-aged woman who shared a strikingly close resemblance to Lucy shouted as she took in the scene in front of her. Lucy's mother, I silently thought as I watched her reaction. She was studying Lucy motionless on the ground with frightened eyes before she turned to glare at her sons. "You boys have really done it this time." The 5 wolves bowed their heads in shame at their mother's angry glare. I didn't leave Lucy's side until her mother returned with blankets to cover up her body. She came back with shorts as well, since my clothes had been destroyed thanks to the unplanned shifting brought about by her brothers. After shifting to my human form, I quickly made my way back to Lucy's side. I didn't want to be away from her for even a second, especially not while she was unconscious. I dropped to my knees next to her and gently took her into my arms, holding her close. "Why is he holding her?" Thane asked angrily. I growled, glaring at her brothers as my deadly gaze pierced straight through them. If they thought they could take her from me when she was in this state, they could go trap themselves. That was only happening over my dead body. My patience was already on borderline and I was ready to kill anything or anyone that separated me from Lucy. "Don't test me, I'm already tempted to kill every one of you," I roared. Lucy in my arms was the only thing preventing me from shifting back into my wolf and letting them feel the full wrath of my wolf. I held back before only because of Lucy, but seeing her like this in my arms was making me lose my grip on my sanity. "Thane," his mother warned, her voice stern. Austin is Lucy's husband whether you like it or not. Sooner or later you boys are going to have to get along, so I suggest you start to learn to accept it from now." Lucy's brothers stiffened at her words, but none of them said anything after that, and I was grateful for the silence as my main concern was Lucy in my arms. "Lucy's POV," I groaned. My body felt sore all over and I had a killer headache that made it almost impossible to think clearly. I slowly opened my eyes, blinking a couple of times before studying my surroundings. The first person that came into view was my mother. Her eyes were swollen and it looked as though she were crying. Mom," I croaked. "Lucy," she whispered, taking my hands in hers. "What happened?" Everything was foggy and I could hardly remember anything. "You shifted for the first time, sweetheart, without any guidance or help from an elderly. Since it was your first shift and you immediately got into a fight right after, it strained your body and mind. You have been unconscious for an entire day." "An entire day?" I kept feeling like I was forgetting something important, but for some reason my memories refused to cooperate with me, my mind completely blank. A small noise at the back of the room caught my attention. I followed the sound as my gaze fell on two faces I hadn't seen before now. Both women were extremely beautiful and were looking at me as if they were deeply concerned about my well-being. Mother followed my gaze and smiled. "They are your sisters," she informed me. "Come introduce yourselves, girls. You've been dying to meet Lucy for the longest while." They both approached me hesitantly. The one with the blonde hair and green eyes was the first to introduce herself. "I'm Eden," she whispered with a warm smile. "And I'm Isabella." My next sister introduced herself. Unlike Eden, Isabella had shiny black hair similar to my own, but her green eyes matched that of Eden's. She also gave me a warm, gentle smile that reached her eyes. I struggled to focus on anything else as something on both of their necks caught my attention. A gasp escaped my mouth in shock as realization of what it was dawned on me. It was the same dragon that was tattooed on my brother's shoulders. The only difference was that it was located right beneath their ear. "Why are the tattoos of the signature dragon on your neck and not on your shoulders like our brothers?" I asked before I could stop myself. Eden and Isabella gave each other knowing looks before turning back to me. "I'll let Eden explain this one," Isabella announced, taking a seat on one of the chairs to the side of me. "Do you know what a mate is?" Eden asked. "A mate? Judging by your blank expression, I'll say it's safe to say you don't know," she concluded before continuing. "Every werewolf is given at least one mate, their other half. It's usually very easy for a wolf to know his/her mate as he/she can sense it immediately. You crave being around the person all the time. In some cases your wolf even screams mate when you've found them. Nothing seems to matter as much anymore but keeping your mate safely by your side. You simply live and breathe for that person after you find them. The feeling is quite intense and very hard to miss." "What does this have to do with the dragon being on your neck?" I inquired, the explanation making me more confused than before. Eden sighed, running her fingers lightly over the tattoo. "This is usually where your mate marks you to signify that he has accepted you as his, completing the mating ritual. Since Isabella and I belong to the council, we are not allowed to have mates as we are already promised to someone else. The women who belong to the council are married off solely for the purpose of forming alliances that could benefit the council." My entire body shivered at her words. "What if you end up finding your mate? What happens then?" Eden stiffened at my question. If he is out there, I pray that I never find him, for it would only bring pain to us both, as we could never be together. That's horrible, I cried. Surely there is some way to get out of this. What if you refuse to give up your mate to marry another? Eden's pretty eyes were sad before she answered. It means death for both of us if I ever refused. Death? My eyes swept over to Isabella now. She wore a similar expression on her face. My sisters were both living a horrible life in this hellhole. My gaze continued to travel to my mother. She looked helpless and devastated. It broke my heart to see them this way. An uncomfortable silence fell amongst us as they waited for me to come to terms with everything they just told me. Isabella the first to break the silence. Enough about our sad lives. This should be a happy reunion. I'm so happy to have you within arm's reach, Lucy. Our family feels like it is complete once again. We've felt like a piece of us have been missing our entire lives without you. Eden confessed. I'm also so very happy that you are finally here. I felt my heart warm at their sweet words. They weren't even aware of how much their beautiful words affected me. It felt like the ice I'd had around my heart for the family that had abandoned me shattered upon meeting them. I returned both of their smiles. I didn't even know I had sisters. In fact, if our brothers hadn't come to find me my words trailed off at the reminder of my brothers coming to find me at King Jeremy's castle. Memories flashed before my eyes as everything flowed back to me all at once. I instantly paled as my body began to shake uncontrollably. Austin. The fight between Austin and my brothers. My God. I rose up instantly and winced as the headache and soreness of my body forced me to lie back down. What's the matter? My mother asked in a worried tone as she tried to get me to sit still. Where is Austin? I demanded, trying my best not to freak out. Is he okay? Everyone in the room stiffened at my question, making me more anxious than I already was. Did something happen to him? Why wasn't anyone saying anything? His wounds from the fight are already halfway healed. Mother started. I sighed and leaned back as relief flooded through me, instantly calming my racing heart. But why was there a but? My eyes snapped back up to my mother's, waiting impatiently for her to continue. The council requested his presence. I froze. What? I asked, completely shaken at her words. My worst nightmare was coming true. The fight in the woods between Austin and your brothers alerted the council of his presence, and so they wanted to have a few words with him while he was here. About what? Mother gave me a sympathetic look. I have no idea, Lucy, but your father and brothers went along with him to make sure the meeting went smoothly and to ensure that no one gets hurt. How would that make me feel any better, considering my brothers had literally just tried to kill Austin in the woods right in front of me despite all of my protests and screams? And my father, the man seemed like he didn't give a care in the world about me. Why would he care about Austin? I needed to get to that meeting immediately. My sanity depended on it. Austin's POV, hell. The perfect word to describe the insides of the council's dark palace. It was so cold that even my inhumane warm body temperature wasn't enough to keep me warm. It reeked of evil and dark magic from all directions. In fact, every corner you turned there was something that reminded you of just how cruel the council really was. From the creepy frozen statues that seemed very much alive to the slaughtered heads they kept hung up on the walls as souvenirs from battles they had won, even down to their weird paintings. Lucy's brothers along with her father led me through a room filled with deadly weapons and down a hallway. No one had spoken a single word to me. The tension in the air was at its peak. Even my own body, which was usually calm under most situations as long as it didn't involve Lucy, was buzzing with tension now, considering what was about to go down in a few minutes. The council members had called for me, demanding that I meet with them. I had absolutely no idea what the meeting concerned, and unfortunately I wasn't in the position to refuse their request. Even though I wanted to take Lucy and leave without meeting these psychos, I wasn't stupid. The council wasn't a force you could easily say no to. They played by their own rules, and unless you had a death wish, you did as they asked of you. I also didn't want to put the lives of both my brother's pack and mine at risk unless I really needed it. They would be my last resort. If there was a possibility that I could leave this hellhole without bringing them into it, I would gladly take it. My thoughts eventually died down as my eyes fell on what I assumed was one of the council members. Prosecutor. Alpha Richard greeted the man with a bow as Lucy's brothers repeated his actions. I quirked a brow at his expectant gaze. Surely he didn't expect me to bow to him as well? When I made no movement to bow before him, he motioned for me to come closer. The prosecutor's eyes held a hint of interest as he continued to study me in silence as I stepped closer to him. You look a bit different from what I expected the leader of the most powerful pack to look like. Sorry to disappoint. I apologized dryly. What did he expect me to look like? Was he looking for two horns on the sides of my head? The prosecutor scratched his chin. Well, let's have some introductions going, shall we? He announced, motioning for me to join him in another room where a few members were already waiting. My eyes scanned the room slowly, taking in all the curious stares. This is Sir Vincent, the council's representative for vampires. The vampire stretched out his hand for a handshake and I warily accepted it. His ice-cold hand gripped mine tighter as he tried to intimidate me with his dark stare, something vampires enjoyed doing since they had the ability to terrorize someone with just a simple look from their soul-sucking eyes. When I didn't budge, he seemed pleasantly surprised that it had no effect on me. I moved on to the younger man besides Vincent. He had a close resemblance to the vampire and I knew who he was before the prosecutor introduced him. This is Vincent's pride and joy, his son Draven. The boy gave a small nod, but unlike his father didn't extend his hand for a handshake. His face held a hint of arrogance as he watched me. And this is Cassandra, the council's representative for witches. Power radiated off the witch in great waves. Her eyes, a deep brown with gold flecks, were studying me with interest, watching me like a hawk watched its next prey. Unfortunately, the rest of the council members aren't here. They've been sent off to deal with a little trouble we've been having and wouldn't be back until after a few days. The prosecutor said with a hint of disappointment latched onto his voice. Since you already know Alpha Richard, our main representative for werewolves, I'm sure you don't need any introductions. He concluded. Lucy's father's face was void of emotion, giving nothing away of how he really felt about the events unfolding before his eyes. Well, let's not beat around the bush anymore and talk about what we really invited you to this meeting for. He continued when I chose to remain quiet. As I'm sure you already know, you've made quite a name for yourself, Alpha Austin. Both the highs and lows in our society have at least heard of your name. From the powerful Alpha who wiped out an entire pack by himself when the pack members had tried to rape his little sister, to the Alpha that defeated one of the world's most dangerous vampires. I stiffened at the reminder of Maya almost getting rape. It still made me furious to this day. If I could kill those again, I would gladly do it in the blink of an eye. I'll say you and your pack deserve your title, have worked for it, and that's the kind of passion and devotion we look for in this council. We only keep the strongest amongst our group. In fact, we only want the strongest, only the best work for us, as I'm sure you're already aware of, since you're not the only one who's made a name for yourself, as we also have made a name for ourselves. Was he seriously comparing his sick council to my pack? We fought for what was right. The council didn't talk about right or wrong, all they cared about was power. With that being said, we would like to give you an official invitation to join the council, he offered. Complete silence fell amongst us upon his words, my brain refusing to believe he just spoke those words to me. He couldn't be serious. Why would I ever join this sick place? Alpha Richard along with his son stiffened at the prosecutor's words, each of them giving each other shocked looks. I have no interest joining the council now or ever, I answered without a second thought. I see. He responded dryly with his face void of any emotion. His tightened fist to his side was the only thing that gave away his anger at my response to his offer. That's too bad, you just gave up a very good. His words were cut off by the sudden opening of the door to the right of me, the main entrance. My entire body stiffened at who I saw walk in next, all the blood draining from my face. Lucy's POV, I felt sick to my stomach. This place gave me the creeps, and it didn't help that I was already desperate to find Austin. Eden and Isabella had finally agreed to let me in the meeting with Austin and the council members after I'd threatened to go by myself. I took a deep breath before opening the large door before me and walked inside with my sisters by my side, my feet stopping in its track at all the creepy stares sent in my direction. My father looked like he wanted to murder my sisters for letting me in, while my brothers gave me a look that said, "Are you serious?" Austin on the other hand looked like he'd just seen a ghost. "Is that the lovely Lucy you've been telling us about, prosecutor?" One of the members asked as his eyes looked me over, making me uncomfortable under his creepy gaze. "She would make me the perfect bride, father," his son admitted with lust-filled eyes. Before anyone could fathom what was happening, Austin grabbed the boy by his neck and shoved him up against the wall. "She's mine, vampire," he warned. Vincent hissed, and with inhumane speed he was beside Austin within seconds. To my horror, he grabbed onto Austin's neck, squeezing tightly. "Let go of my son." Austin didn't budge. In fact, he seemed unaffected by the vampire's hold on his neck as he continued to tighten his own hold on the boy's neck, giving him a death glare. "Now there is no need for any violence right now. I've just finished furnishing the insides of this beautiful place. Let's not destroy it in one day," the prosecutor started to say. To my relief, Vincent immediately let go of Austin at his words, which again proved how much authority this man had within the council. "Say it! Say she's mine!" Austin growled, refusing to let go of the boy, who was turning more pale than he already was with each passing second. "She's yours!" the boy choked out. A few seconds later, Austin finally let go of him. He turned to glare at all the other members in the room as if to emphasize his point that I belonged to him and no one else. "Well, I for one think we need some drinks shared after this little incident," the prosecutor announced with a chuckle. It seemed as though he enjoyed what just occurred, almost as though it brought him excitement. That man was sick in his head. "Eden," he called. "Go serve us some wine." Eden nodded. Yes, prosecutor, she said as she quickly obeyed his words and rushed out the room. So where were we? The prosecutor started before a loud knock interrupted him. Are you serious? He asked, clearly unhappy about being disrupted. Come in, he shouted in an irritated tone. My eyes widened in shock and horror as a few guards walked in, dragging James along with them. It seemed like one guard alone wasn't enough to hold him down, as they even struggled to drag him in now. Long, heavy chains traveled from his tied hands behind his back straight up to his neck. He was bleeding from head to toe, his body full of deep nasty wounds. The blood was dripping onto the floor, tainting it. His breathing was hard as his gaze went to Austin's as if to apologize for getting caught. My heart ached at the look he gave him. If I was feeling this way at seeing James like this, I couldn't even imagine what it felt like for Austin to see his brother in such a state. We caught this one lurking around the castle. One of the guards finally spoke, pulling at the chains once more so that James fell forward. Austin stiffened beside me. Get those chains off him. The prosecutor rose a dark brow at Austin. I presume you know this intruder. Austin's dark gaze pierced through the prosecutor. I could practically feel the anger radiating off his body. He's my brother. Ah, I see, the prosecutor said, taking a step closer to James. As far as I know, you have two brothers. He continued as he placed a finger under James' chin, forcing him to look him straight in the eye. What's your name? James spat blood at his face. The guards pulled harder at the chains at his sign of disrespect. I winced, unable to imagine the kind of pain he was in. His name is James, I answered frantically when it seemed like James wasn't going to answer them anytime soon. I just couldn't stand to see him in pain, couldn't see them torturing him with the chains. James looked like he rather died than speak a single word to the members of the council. His lips were set in a straight line and he had a murderous expression on his face. Alpha of the Moonlight Shadow Pack, the prosecutor said, his eyes regarding James with interest now. Like your brother's pack, we've also heard a lot about yours, the third most powerful pack ever known, with a lot of similar stories to that of Austin's. James remained silent, his eyes narrowed. We have two of the world's most powerful alphas in our company today. Interesting, the only female member of the council finally commented. A door opened, providing us with a distraction, and a few seconds later Eden walked in with the glasses filled with wine on a tray, her eyes taking in the scene in front of her. They traveled from my horror-struck face to Austin's deadly pissed-off one and finally fell on James on the ground. I watched the terrified look on her face as her eyes widened. James looked up in her direction as if sensing her eyes on him, and as soon as his gaze fell on her, a loud possessive growl escaped his mouth as he pulled at the chains aggressively as if to get to her. A mighty roar escaped his mouth when he realized he couldn't break the chains. Eden gasped and the tray fell from her hands, crashing to the floor. What was happening? When James continued to roar and thrash against the chains almost desperately, the guards took out a long whip and before any one of us could react lashed it against his bare back. I winced at the loud sound it made upon contact as more blood flowed from his body. The stifled gasp that came from Eden caught my attention as my gaze snapped back up to her. My breath hitched at what I saw there. She looked as though she'd seen a ghost, and as if her mind had suddenly caught up to the scene in front of her. A loud terrified scream escaped her mouth as she all but ran to James' side. Stop it! she cried, throwing herself on top of him to stop the onslaughts. I stood completely dumbfounded at her response. She acted like someone who had known James her entire life and couldn't bear to see him in any pain. But I was sure Eden hadn't seen James before, so none of this was making any sense to me. Even the guards had stopped their torture, unsure of what to do next. "Somebody get these chains off him!" she screamed. Everyone in the room remained completely still at her reaction. No one moved, not a single soul said a word. Austin was frozen like a statue besides me. My brothers looked like it was suddenly the end of the world. Father seemed like he was on the verge of collapsing, and the prosecutor, for once he didn't seem calm and collected. His face twisting into an ugly expression, I came to the sudden conclusion that I hated this look far more than I did his creepy happy one. What was I missing here? For everyone seemed like they knew something I didn't, and whatever it was, wasn't any good, as no one in the room was happy about it. In fact, it seemed as though it was bad news for every single person present in the room now. "Eden!" Father shouted, finally breaking the silence and shattering the invisible ice within the room. "Get out of here now!" Eden trembled at Father's words. "Father," she whispered, giving him a helpless look, refusing to move from James's side. His eyes narrowed into one of those dark looks he usually gave to my brothers. "Now!" he roared as the palace windows shook at the power that radiated off the terrifying sound. A loud menacing growl tore from James at my father's tone. Eden climbed to her feet and ran out the room without speaking another word. James watched her go with a pained look before pulling aggressively at the chains once more, the guards struggling to keep him under their control. In fact, if he continued with his actions, there was a high chance he would break free, and no one could predict what would happen from there, especially with the rage bottled up inside of him now. His breathing was hard, blood leaking from his forehead down his eyes, giving an illusion of tears as it continued down his face. "You better control your brother," the prosecutor warned as he turned to Austin. "If you don't, we will," he threatened. The deadly look in his eyes alone spoke volumes on what that threat meant. Austin stiffened once more, not pleased at the unmistakable threat towards his brother. "Get these chains off him first." The guards looked at the prosecutor for confirmation, and after a few seconds he nodded. James sprang up from the ground instantly, blood dripping onto the floor as he glared at the prosecutor. Before he could say anything, however, Austin was in front of him in seconds. "Let's talk outside, brother," he insisted, placing a hand on James's shoulder. James reluctantly moved his angry gaze from the prosecutor and aimed it towards Austin, his eyes softening a little at the look Austin gave him. His breathing slowed, and it became clear that he was trying hard to gain control of his body once more. After a few minutes he finally nodded his head and motioned for Austin to lead the way. The tension in Austin's body seemed to lessen a little, that is until his gaze settled on the vampire a little distance away from us. He was in front of Draven in the blink of an eye, growling aggressively at him. "I don't want Lucy in the same room as this, when I'm not around," he snapped, glaring at him. "Isabella," the prosecutor ordered. "Take Lucy to see Eden. We have more important matters to discuss, and I don't want any disturbances." Isabella nodded. "Yes, prosecutor." She obeyed, taking my hand in hers and leading me out the room. I looked over my shoulders and caught Austin's eyes on me, the look there making my body tremble, something I would never get used to. I continued to stare into his eyes, trapped by his hungry gaze, unable to look away for even a second. It was only when the doors closed behind us and I had no choice but to look the other way did I finally stop. Austin's POV, James was tense besides me. In fact, it was the first time I had ever seen him like this. He was usually calm and collected even under stressful conditions. But this was expected, something that couldn't be controlled. I know. I told him before he could say anything. I know she's your mate, brother. It was also the first time I'd ever seen him this helpless and out of control. It looked as though he had absolutely no control over his feelings now. I could see the battle in his eyes as he battled between what was the sane thing to do and taking what belonged to him. It was a werewolf's natural nature to want what belonged to him. Your mate gave you a reason to live, a reason to fight. Now that James had found his mate, it was only normal for him to want her by his side. The need to claim her as his own would be strong. The need, which was almost impossible to ignore, was enough to drive any sane person mad. A raw, insatiable need. A need that I felt whenever I was around Lucy. Who was I kidding? It was there even when she wasn't near. Even now, with everything going on around us, I still had a soul-shattering need to claim her in every way possible. A need to mark her, a need to let every person know that she was mine, mine. I almost murdered that vampire's son in cold blood when he suggested to make Lucy his bride. I still felt like ripping him apart now. I shook the thought out of my head. What was wrong with me? I had more important matters at hand. Like the fact that my brother's mate happened to be the worst possible pick ever. As I watched him now, I could see the strain it put on his body, having Eden so near and not being able to claim her. In this case, however, it wasn't possible for the claim to happen, especially not now. This was the worst possible time for James to try to claim his mate. She belonged to the council. By right she was their property, and there wasn't much we could do without starting a war. A war that I couldn't possibly start when Lucy was around. Her safety mattered to me more than anything else. The thought of her in danger made my gut twist and my heart clench painfully. No, I couldn't bring any danger to Lucy. Not now, not ever. Leave. You must leave, brother. James' eyes snapped up to mine at my words. He looked like that was the last thing he expected me to say. No, he replied almost instantly in a flat tone. James. I pressed. We have too much at stake right now. Eden belongs to the council. If we plan on taking her from here, it would require a lot of planning. If you leave now, the council wouldn't feel as threatened. We could take them by surprise another time. He still didn't look convinced. Taking her from the council now is a great risk you'll be taking, brother. Think about it. If we lose the battle, Eden would be the one to be harmed by the council, with the worst punishment being death. The best and smartest decision is to leave. James stiffened at my words, his body motionless, and I could tell those words did the trick at convincing him to leave. He shook his head. What about you? How can I leave you here with Lucy? It would be a risk letting James leave. But I also couldn't take the chance of having him here when Eden was around. The smallest thing could flip him off. After seeing his reaction from earlier, there was no way I could have James anywhere around Eden. If James started a fight, things could go south quickly. I could end up losing both my brother and Lucy. No. He had to leave. I'll be okay. I promised. It wasn't the first time I was placed in a difficult situation by myself. If you still have doubts about our safety, you could remain with Lucas and stay back with the packs. I suggested. I could see him battling with himself as he fought to comply with my words, obviously not wanting to leave when there was so much at risk. I saw the moment he finally gave up, not finding any other better solution. James was the type who looked at all possible outcomes of a situation. He was always the one to think rationally. But this time I knew that this was the most difficult situation he has ever been faced with, since it involved none other than his mate. "James," I said, catching his attention once more. "Do not return unless you hear my signal." He swallowed but eventually nodded. "I give you my word, brother." Lucy's POV, what's happening? I asked, alarmed. Eden was on the ground in tears, looking completely lost and broken. My heart ached at the sight before me. Both Isabella and Mother were trying to comfort her. "James is her mate," Isabella answered, wiping Eden's tears. My eyes widened in horror. Everything Eden and Isabella had told me before replayed in my head now. Eden and James could never be together, and if they chose to disobey the council, it meant death for them both. No. This couldn't be happening. What's going to happen now? I demanded, my hands shaking. "There is nothing we can do," Mother answered in a broken tone. "We can only hope James leaves this alone. If he tries to fight for Eden, it would only make things worse for everyone." Eden's eyes widened in horror, pulling away from Mother's embrace as if a switch had suddenly come on upon the mention of James fighting for her. "I just want to see him at least once," she cried, climbing to her feet. "I need to see him." Mother and Isabella blocked her way immediately. "You know you can't do that, Eden." Isabella stopped her. "Did you see what happened in there a few minutes ago? They were torturing James. If you went to meet him now, things would only get worse. He can lose his life." That seemed like enough to stop Eden in her tracks. Her face went pale as she dropped to the floor once more with a defeated look. I dropped to my knees in front of her and gently took her into my arms, not saying a word, for I knew there wasn't anything I could possibly say to make this any better. She held onto me as she continued to sob uncontrollably. "Nothing." Sir Vincent's POV, everyone was silent after the meeting. Things had taken a completely different turn. The prosecutor's usually calm demeanor was tensed now, a sight that was very rare to see. "We may have a problem," he admitted. "That Alpha James is Eden's mate. If it were any other normal werewolf, everything would have went smoothly, but he's a powerful alpha along with his brother. Both of their packs together could be fatal to us." I saw where the prosecutor was coming from. James and his brother Austin were powerful and posed a threat to our original plans with Eden. That is, if James decided to fight for her, which judging from the scene today was more than likely to happen. "She's already promised to Hunter," Alpha Richard pointed out. "That's all that matters." The tension in the room only increased at the mention of Hunter. Hunter. The heartless monster. After his mate was murdered right before his eyes, the Alpha had turned dark. He became one of the most feared killers in the supernatural world. In fact, he was one of the Council's most important clients. Richard's words surprised me. Did he really not care that James was his daughter's mate? Would he really rather she got married off to that killer Hunter? Or was it just an act, to get on the prosecutor's good side? I wasn't sure. Richard was never easy to read. It always annoyed me that I couldn't read the wolf. now more than ever. James isn't going to just let his mate go. Any alpha with that power would fight till death for his mate. What we saw in the meeting room was only just the beginning. The prosecutor pointed out stiffly. We have to inform Hunter that his bride is ready for the claiming. He needs to claim her before James can. And if James does so before Hunter? The prosecutor's gaze snapped to mine angrily. No such thing could ever happen. You know Hunter, he's a brutal killer. If he doesn't get his promised bride, we could lose his alliance with us and even worse, become one of his enemies. It's not a risk I'm willing to take. He snapped. I don't care what we have to do. Eden belongs to Hunter and that's the only person allowed to claim her. But can we really stop James and Austin? Cassandra asked with a wicked glint in her eyes as she proceeded to make herself comfortable on the cushions. The witch enjoyed these kind of events. It excited her more than any man in her life ever could. I mean, just look at how Austin attacked Draven today. Not a care in the world that he was in the presence of the council. And James, you saw how many of our best guards were needed to keep him at bay. If you ask me, they're even stronger than we originally thought. She continued, as she intentionally directed her words to me, knowing just how much it would piss me off. Something he enjoyed doing. The sudden reminder of what he tried to do earlier had my temper rising, threatening to explode. The prosecutor turned to study me as if sensing the sudden change in my mood. I knew what he was going to say before he even opened his mouth. Don't let your rage ruin my plans, he warned, his usually calm gaze turning to stone as he glared at me. You will do as I say, do not interfere with Austin. I know you have a rage after what he did, but I may need the alliance of that wolf in the future. So leave it alone. Am I clear, Vincent? He snarled in his deadly tone when I refused to make any comments on the matter. We had enough power and connections, we could survive without one alpha. Yes, prosecutor. I forced myself to say. Good. I quietly waited for everyone to leave the meeting room before calling for John. The vampire watched me with curious eyes upon entering. You called? Who does he think he is? I roared, pelting a glass against the wall. Attacking my own son in front of my very eyes, he must have a death wish. John quirked a brow. I'm guessing I missed out on all the fun. He concluded. Who are we speaking about? Alpha Austin Lance Vinci. His name slipped from my mouth like venom. I hated him. The servant rushed to pick up the broken pieces of the shattered glass, shivering at my rage. John's eyes widened upon the mention of the Alpha's name, a reaction most people had upon hearing his name. My rage intensified further. Well, he is the most powerful Alpha. I don't care who he is. He disrespected us the moment he placed his filthy hands on my boy. I shouted, glaring at John. John was my closest in command. The vampire handled most of the council's assassinations along with the Cross brothers. He was studying me now, sensing just how much the incident from today affected me. He gave me a knowing look, his gaze darkening. What do you want me to do? I thought about his question for a moment, the answer right there in front of me. What could possibly hurt the Alpha, bring him the most pain in the worst way possible? I smiled. Hit him where it hurts the most, his wife Lucy. Join our Facebook and WhatsApp group for more updates, link is given in description. Rest audiobook will be continued in next episode.